Hey, this is Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Today I'm going to show you how to install the Rugged Radio's complete communication kit on your side-by-side. These radios are the industry standard for communication systems and they're built to last. Now, they're going to be great for the person that wants to be able to clearly communicate with their passengers without being drowned out by the sound of the engine, as well as being able to talk to other cars. You also have the ability to stream music and answer phone calls with this. Your range for the radio is going to be about 20 to 30 miles, and the kit comes with 2 headsets, but if you have a 4-seater car, then you have the option to buy 2 additional headsets. Alternatively, you have the option to get the kit with helmet kits instead of headsets. It all comes down to preference. Now, as far as installation goes, it's going to be similar for most side-by-sides with a few minor differences, and the machine we're going to show you how to install these on is a 2020 Polaris XP Turbo. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get this kit installed. To get this job done, we have our Rugged Radio kit. And this kit, the main thing that's unique to it is the mounting plate specifically for our machine. And then the rest of the stuff will be similar to whatever you have. So we have our radio, we have our antenna, and then this audio filter, this is going to filter out RFI so you have a clear signal. As far as the mounting goes on the antenna, you do have an option to run this big magnet base, but since we have an aluminum roof, we actually have an alternate option to mount that antenna, and this is just going to work better for our machine. So again, this doesn't come with the kit, but it is an option if that's what you want to do. Over here we have the second half of the kit, and this is going to come with your intercom, your press to talk buttons. These are the wires that run up to your helmet kits or headsets. And again, you have the option to choose a kit with headsets or a kit with helmet kits, whichever you prefer. And you can also buy additional helmet kits or headsets for a 4-seater. And we also sourced some additional zip ties, so that might be a good idea to help you tie down some of these wires. And then before you begin the install process, you want to read through your provided set of instructions to get familiar with that install process. To begin the install process for this radio, we're going to start removing some body panels, and that's going to allow us access throughout all our wires to our central location for the radio in the dash. All right, to get this done, we've already removed our windshield so we can access some of our body panels. Now, what we're going to do is remove our hood, and then we have this upper panel right here. We're going to remove this. It has 4 Torx bit screws in it, and then we also have an upper and lower compartment in the dash. And we're going to remove this upper panel right now. And for that upper panel, we just have 2 plastic rivets that go through it, and it pops right out. Now we can take out the 4 screws in the upper panel and remove it. Once this upper panel is out of the way, you can access a screw that goes into the back of that lower compartment. So that's our next step, is to remove that screw. Now on the Polaris RZRs, this is where our mounting bracket goes, and this will vary a little bit from machine to machine. But for us, what we need to do is get this lower compartment out now. And the last thing we need to do on it, there's a light connected to the bottom. We need to pull that out of it. Now that the light's out, we'll remove this lower compartment. Next step, we're going to remove our seats and the center console. So up here on top of the rocker panel, I'm going to remove this screw, and then we have 2 trim clips, and this is just going to help us route some wiring later on. And we're also going to remove our fender. And we're also going to remove this screw just behind the fender. That's going to help us route those wires just a little bit easier. So now that we have all of our panels off, we're ready to start routing our wires. Now, all of the steps we've taken so far are specific to this machine, but if you have a different machine, all we've done, we're uncovering the battery so you have access to it, and you have a clear path throughout wires back to it. And then you also have a clear path throughout wires where your intercom cables and your antenna cables are going to go. And all of these cables, you need to route them separately so they're not overlapping on each other. That way you avoid any radio frequency interference. At this point, we need to find a place to mount our antenna. So wherever you choose to mount it, you need to make sure the coax cable is going to reach that. And this is the magnetic base that comes in the kit. And we have an aluminum roof, so this isn't going to work for us. So we opted to go with this bar clamp, and this is just going to allow us to go to any horizontal tube on the frame and get our antenna mounted up that way. Now before I hook up the coax cable, I do want to point out that it needs to be grounded out. So if you're running this to a bare metal surface, then you don't need to use this ground cable. But since we're not, we're going to use the ground cable, and we're actually going to run it down on the back of the machine. There's a grounding point on right next to our skid plate. So that's how we're going to run this. All right, to get the coax cable installed, we're going to remove that top nut, and then we have our ground strap. I'm going to place that on there. We'll come up through the bottom on our mount. And then this nut, it's a good idea to put a little bit of grease on that O-ring just so you don't have anything binding up. So we'll go ahead and tighten this nut down. We're just going to use an adjustable wrench. This doesn't have to be crazy tight, we're just going to snug it down. And before we hook up that grounding strap, we're actually going to disconnect this negative cable on the battery. So now we can go ahead and start routing where the wires are actually going to go. Now we can remove this nut for these grounding cables, and we'll hook up our ground strap. Now if you're working on a different machine than we are, you're just going to have to find a different location to ground this cable out on the frame. Now for the coax cable, we're just going to route this up to the front of the machine to our central mounting location for the radio. Now as you're routing this cable, you want to avoid any sharp corners or any moving parts that could damage the cable. So as we're routing this up, you'll notice we have this power wire for our light bar. You want to avoid having this cable next to these power wires, especially if this power wire was running up this pillar. You definitely wouldn't want to run this coax cable next to it. But where we're going to have this tied back and this is out just a little ways, I think we're going to be all right on that. One last thing with the coax cable, if you get to your central mounting location and you have a lot of extra cord left, you don't want to coil it up like this. This is going to create issues for you. So you have two options. You can cut the extra length off and then install a new cable end, or the other thing you can do is take a longer route through the dash and use up all of the cable, and that's how you're going to want to do it. Now that we have our cable routed, we're going to install our antenna. We have this O-ring on bottom. I've put a little bit of grease on that, and then we're going to tighten this down by hand. Then we have two Allen keys up at the top. I'll drop the antenna down into that and tighten these set screws. Now we're going to route the intercom wiring, and this is the wiring that's going to go to our helmets. So we're going to start in the back with this end that actually connects to the helmet. And keep in mind, you have your co-driver and your driver wiring. So this co-driver, we're just going to route it right to the middle. If you choose, you could run one wire to the left side, one to the right, but this is going to be a little bit simpler for us just to run one to the middle and then run the other one and both on the left side of the machine. And we'll just route those wires to the central location. For the co-driver cable, what we're going to do is leave a little bit of extra length, and that way we can connect it to the helmet. We have enough cord to do that. And then we're going to drill a hole on each side of this and actually zip tie this wire in place across this back panel. And if you're drilling into a panel like this, you want to make sure that there's nothing on the back side that you're going to hit. So further up, we have some stuff up here that we might hit. So we're just going to drill down a little bit further, and I've also marked this so I don't go too deep. And for now, you can leave these loose, and that way when you have your seats installed and your helmet on, you can make any adjustments to this length that you need to. All right, now for the driver's cord, I'm just going to use a zip tie, and I'm going to go to this bar for the door. Now we're going to take both of these cables, we're going to run these down by the rocker panel and out towards the front of the machine. Once we're through there, we're going to go up and over through the dash into the central mounting location. Now down here in the corner, I am installing a zip tie, but again, I'm not going to tighten it down yet. Now the side that we have the fender off on, we pulled the wires through, and we're going to follow this rail up into the dash. Now for the push to talk buttons, make sure you have these on the correct sides, driver to driver and passenger to passenger. So the driver one, we're going to mount this to the steering wheel. We're just going to Velcro this on. And then the push to talk buttons, they come with a big zip tie. These need to be strain relieved. So what we're going to do is make a loop in this cable, and I'm going to run a zip tie through that loop around the steering wheel spoke. And that's just going to ensure that we don't pull the end of the cable out of the push to talk button. Now we'll trim the zip tie. We'll stuff the center part of the cord through this corner of the steering wheel, and then we're going to route this to our central location. If you want to put a second relief for this cord up on the dash, that's fine too if you want. Or you can just run it back here. And keep in mind with this one, you definitely want to pay attention to how you tie this down and keep it away from any moving parts. Now on the driver push to talk, I did drill a hole up through this dash right here. And I'm going to put one more strain relief in this, and we'll tie it down. Then we'll make sure we can fully turn the steering wheel both ways without anything binding up. All right, this passenger side push to talk button we're going to put on this grab bar. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open our glove box, and we're going to insert this co-driver wire just below the mount. And again, we'll feed that to the central location. So now we can adjust the grab bar where we want it. Just keep in mind when you put this in place, if you ever move this grab bar, you're going to need to have enough cord to adjust this wherever you're going to go with it. And again, we're going to use the zip tie that came in our kit. We're going to make a loop and make a strain relief for this button as well. So now we're going to install the audio filter. We need to make sure these two power wires are facing the central location when we install this. And where this lower console actually came out, or this lower compartment, right behind it there's a bar, and we're going to zip tie this to the back of that bar. All right, for the power wires, we're going to start back by the battery, and I'm just going to set these where they go for now. I'm not going to connect them yet. This is going to be our last step. So with those about where they need to be, I'm going to route these wires all the way to the front of the machine following the stock wiring harness. We're going to come up on the other side of the firewall and then come back through it into our central mounting location. Next, I'll connect those same power wires into the noise suppressor and make sure the connector is pushed in all the way and clicks into place. So we have another grounding strap. This is going to go to the radios. And what I'm going to do is just ground this to our bus bar and then run it to that central location as well. And you want to make sure wherever you ground this, it could be just a bolt on the frame on another machine. Just make sure you have enough room so you can easily connect this to the radios once you get to that point. So I'm going to run this through the firewall and to that central location. All right, now that we have all of our wiring to this central location, we can tie everything down. And when you do that, make sure that you leave about 6 inches of cord out of this central location so we can remove and install the radio easily. All right, now that we have all of our cables routed where they need to go, we're ready to prep our radio and our intercom. So how this is going to mount, we have our faceplate, and this just has 2 screws. This is going to sit on a tab inside your dash. And then you have 2 screws that are self-tappers. They're just going to screw up and hold everything in place. So that might be a little hard to see. So we just want to show everything on the workbench, how it's going to be installed. So the intercom, it's going to go on top and the radio will be on bottom. All right, to get the radio ready, we have 2 mounting brackets for it and then 2 screws per mounting bracket. We're just going to leave those loose for now. We'll adjust everything once we have this mounted in our bracket. So the next step, what we're going to do is take this faceplate and we'll set it onto the radio. We'll take 2 of these button head bolts and we'll screw these into the brackets. And we'll go ahead and adjust this where we want it. So that's looking pretty good right there. We'll go ahead and tighten these screws on the sides. And we'll go ahead and snug down these button head bolts. Now over here we have a couple of brackets that came with the kit that we will not be using on this install since we're using the faceplate. But there's a couple of brackets that came with this intercom. And there's some bolts and a washer that come with these. They have those cap nuts on them. We will be using these pieces. So how this is going to work with the intercom, these brackets, again, they mount to the faceplate, and then these bolts, they actually slide down the side of the intercom. You're going to set this in place, this bracket. You'll take your washer, and then your nut, and this is just going through that center hole. And then once you have everything installed and adjusted up, you can tighten down these nuts. So this is just to give you an idea of how this mounts up, but we actually have to install this intercom after the faceplate is installed into the machine. So for now, we're actually going to slide this piece out. And we're going to install both of these brackets onto the faceplate. So these bolts for the brackets, I'm just going to leave them loose enough where we can still move the bracket around where we need it. And this nut on the end of the bolt, we're going to leave that loose. And that's going to allow us to slide everything into place. Now that we have the faceplate ready, I want to talk about the wiring, how we're going to connect everything, because it's going to be really hard to see on the machine. So we have these plugs in the back and we just have a 2-seater. So we're going to have the driver side connections and then the co-driver connections. And they're color coded, and you just match these up with the labels on our wires that we've already talked about. And just keep in mind, they're going to be indexed. So there's a notch in the top of these connections. And then headset's going to be in top. Blue is for your driver, and then push to talk is going to be on bottom. And again, blue is for driver, red is for the co-driver. Next, we have these 2 black cables coming out of our intercom and radio. These are indexed as well, so you want to make sure this groove lines up with this tab when you connect them. And then we have the power wires for each of these, These are going to go to the audio filter. So over here at the machine, I'm going to connect the power wire. Make sure that snaps into place. Then we can take our antenna and connect that. And then again, this connection we're not going to worry about yet, but what we do need to do right here is take our ground wire and we're going to mount this ground to the back of the radio. Now once you've made those connections, we can go ahead and slide the radio into place. Keep in mind that we have this tab at the bottom. That's going to connect on the back side of this plastic piece in the dash. So once that's in there, I'm going to pull all the wires I can through this, and then we can start making our connections to the intercom. So again, we have our driver's side, that's going to be blue, and passenger side, that's all going to be red. And we have the ground wire for the intercom. All right, so with the intercom, first thing I'm going to connect is my ground strap. That's going to go in this corner. This already has a ground wire there. Make sure you don't lose any of the washers on this screw. So I'll go ahead and tighten that down. All right, so once the ground strap is in place, I'm going to connect my co-driver stuff first. And keep in mind, you don't want these wires crossed. So first one I'm going to connect is the push to talk button. Again, make sure you have these indexed. So that clipped all the way into place. On top of that, we're going to do the co-driver headset. Then we have our driver's side push to talk and the driver's side headset. Make sure they're all pushed all the way in. And then our power cable and this cable that connects this to our radio, we're going to connect these on the back side. It's going to be really hard to see. And again, this power wire is just connecting to our audio filter. So down here we've connected our power cables, and the next thing we have to do is to connect the intercom to the radio. And the last thing that we need to do with the wiring is there was the light that we removed from our lower compartment that we will not be reusing. We need to find a bracket in a similar location to zip tie that to. Now we can go ahead and tighten the bolts for the intercom. Next, we'll install the two self-tapping screws into the faceplate. You don't want to get those too tight because this plastic is easy to strip out. Next, we're going to mount the handset, and we're just going to go to the right of our radio, and we're going to clean this area off with a little bit of contact cleaner, and then peel the backing on this sticky surface, and we'll press it into place. Now for the handset, this is magnetized, so we'll just stick it on there. We're going to pop this cover on our radio and we'll connect the handset. So at this point we can take our power cables and connect them to the battery. All right, so you guys can see we had to straighten this tab out so we can hook up this terminal. All right, so we're going to take this eyelet for the positive cable and slide it under this battery boot. That silicone spray is going to help it go in a little bit easier. And then we'll install it onto the battery bolt. So we'll go ahead and tighten down our positive cable and put the protective boot back over it. And we'll do the same steps for the negative battery cable. Now at this point we can reinstall all the plastics, body panels, and seats that we removed. That's all there is to installing the Rugged Radio's complete communications kit on your side-by-side. If you need this kit, it's available on our website. We offer free shipping on orders over $75, so be sure to check that out. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Now that we've showed you how to install the intercom and the radio into your machine, if you need help getting your helmet set up, then be sure to watch our video on that.